Hello, my friends. Welcome. I hope your day is going well wherever your day is. I hope that it is going well. I hope that the year is going well for you. It's hard to believe we're almost a quarter of the way through the year. And it's been a hard year. It's been a year, maybe 2025 has been a hard year. I don't know about 2026 yet, but it's certainly been a hard winter. And I know that a lot of people are lamenting that. We had a little brief spat there where it looked like it was going to warm up a little bit. And we were kind of done with the snow, and then more snow came here in Michigan, and that's going on outside right now. And so, this is March 18th, and the year is quickly kind of getting its groove. I hope it's a good year for you. One of the things that I think can be hard when we are processing those things, like hard years or long winters or winters that aren't going the way that we want them to, or when we start to evaluate years, is we can get caught up in something that I want to talk about today that I think almost all of us do at some point. Certainly a lot of us do, but very few people admit it. And that is, we secretly believe that our problems are special. We secretly believe that there's no one else who has problems like ours, no one else who has problems as difficult as ours. In fact, I have a friend who will get really mad at me because he's going through a very hard spot right now. And I'll be like, man, everybody has hard lives. And he's like, no, they don't. And he'll get very upset, and it's okay. I can handle that. But we talk through it. And I'm going to talk today why I believe that, why it is a very big problem. Because what happens when we do this is we enslave ourselves to our problems and we put our focus in the wrong area. So I want to talk about that today. I want to talk about how do we get healthy. But first, I do want to bring your attention to my new book. Dropped about a month ago, called Start Anyway. It's a short book. It's less than 50 pages. It's only on Kindle. It's 99 cents. You can find it if you go to joemartino.com, click on the books link, and it's there. You can also find my other book, The Emotionally Secure Couple. I want to take a few minutes to talk to you about what that book series is going to be. Start Anyway is part of a short book series that I'm calling Short Books for Serious Change. And what this is going to be is probably 10 to 12 books that deal with different aspects of change, things that I regularly see in the therapy room that I think can help people who maybe aren't ready to go to therapy, maybe don't have the resources to go to therapy, maybe don't want to go to therapy, but they're willing to spend 99 cents on a book. We're working on some sort of paper version of it. We do have a couple ideas for the books that are coming, which my second book should be dropping here in just a few weeks in that series, and we'll certainly be talking more about that as we go. All right, so let's switch now and kind of talk about being enslaved to problems. And who knows, maybe this will end up being a topic for my Short Books Serious Change series.
You're listening to The Joe Martino Show, a podcast dealing with all things emotional, relational, and human nature. Joe is a licensed counselor in the state of Michigan, specializing in relationship therapy. He is also the author of the book, The Emotionally Secure Couple. All advice offered in this episode is offered for entertainment and educational purposes only. Enjoy the show.
So let's kind of talk about this difficult truth. The reality is that we often think that our problems are somehow special, that they are just not difficult. Right? It's not that they're just difficult, they're special. They are different, more complex, more unfair, more uniquely ours than anyone else's, more uniquely difficult, more uniquely hard. And we tend to really get caught up in this because the moment we start believing that, we're enslaved to them. And you'll see this even in the language that we're using. It drives me crazy. If I'm honest with you, it is something that I find a lot of distress with. I don't know, distress is probably a strong word, but I am annoyed by it. And that is everything in the counseling field is complex now. Complex PTSD, complex anxiety, complex ADHD. And I think it's just this idea that, well, we've got to put more terms on it because getting healthy is hard. And I talk about this a lot. There is a coming reckoning for therapy. And I think one of those coming reckonings are, we have kind of pitched it like just go and everything gets better, which is weird to me that we would do that, but we did, and people aren't getting better, so now we've got to put the C in front of it. Because here's the thing, and you can come for me on this, I just don't care. All PTS is complex. Well, no, some people don't fit in these neat lines. Oh, really? People don't fit in neat lines? Yeah, I agree. Maybe that's why I've been ranting and raving against the, well, what is your personality type? Oh, what on the Enneagram are you? Well, I'm complex Enneagram. I'm whatever number hates it. Well, what Myers-Briggs are you? Oh, well, I am the don't really care person. So what is that? DRCP. I'm a DRCP on the Myers-Briggs because like they had no training in psychology at all. They just needed to make money. Mom and daughter needed to make money, lived in a time where women weren't allowed to get regular jobs too easily. And they found a way to make money, which good for them, but let's just call that what it is. In the Enneagram, I'm an 8, I'm a 7, I'm a 3. That's why I do things I shouldn't. Who cares what number you are? If people are complex, let's just run that out, right? Like maybe we're just CPs, we're complex people. And okay, so I'm done. That's my ADHD rant on that. And sometimes people are like, well, why does that bother you so much? Because here's the thing. The minute we start believing that somehow, well, it's not just that I have this, it's complex. Of course it's complex. You're human. That's why it's complex, because humans are complex. And there's a seduction to this, because when our problem becomes special and unique, and it is just so complex, it can become untouchable. We can then translate it into our own identity. We can make it who we are. And we can then kind of reach into this world of like, well, that's just because I have C, fill in whatever it is. I have C, what did I say I am? DRCP, don't really care person. Yeah, I have C, DRCP. I am a complex, don't really care person on the Myers-Briggs. Because when it becomes untouchable, your problem becomes permanent. You stop asking, what can I do about it? Because that doesn't matter, because it's complex and it's special and it's unique and it's hard. And you start asking, why? Why is this happening to me? Why is this so much worse than anywhere else? Why is my problems unique to this? And this isn't new. M. Scott Peck wrote about this in his book, The Road Less Traveled. It's like on page 4. It's the very opening. I have read that to more clients than I care to count. I've read it in this podcast a couple times. It's not a new idea, but that subtle shift changes everything. And it moves us away from responsibility and towards identity and futility. And I think it's part of the reason that I see so many people who are stuck. Because rather than saying, you know what, life is just a series of problems that I have to solve. Life is hard. Life is difficult. I have complex life. My life is complex and hard. And so then I just can't help it. I can't help that I yelled at you. I can't help that I screamed. And this happens, right? Like all the time. I'm dealing with a personal situation with family members, not families that is in my family, as in like where I live now, but my family of origin. And one of the things that I'm hearing a lot is, well, it's complex. Well, how complex is it? Somebody did something wrong or somebody didn't do something wrong, and people disagree on that. And then we either move forward or we don't. And that's what happens when we start to make everything special and unique. That becomes a problem that you can't just run out. It becomes a problem that then becomes your identity. It forms you, it shapes you, it makes you. I had a client like this. They sat across the room from me in the room. And this happens a lot. We sit across, we're in the room. I'm sitting in a chair. They're sitting across from me in a couch, typically in a couch. Sometimes I have some clients that sit on the intern chair. And this particular client that I'm thinking of, they were just convinced that their problems were so unique. They had been legitimately hurt repeatedly by people they had trusted. And like we're talking family of origin, we're talking organizations, like church organizations, but not just church organizations, pagan work organizations. They had been promised promotions that hadn't happened. Now look, am I taking their word for that? Of course I am, right? And here's the thing, they just kept saying to me, well, it's just my situation's different. One of the things that we try to do sometimes in therapy is we help clients recognize other people who have been in problems that they're in or similar to what they're in, and they move forward with them. And this client just couldn't see anything that related to their problems. And here's the thing, it's not that I'm saying that their pain isn't real. I'm actually saying the exact opposite. Their pain is real. Their problems are real. The pain that comes from them is real. And I don't want to minimize that. I want us to recognize it. I also want us to look underneath the pain for the belief that's driving the response. And that belief for this client was no one else ever has been hurt like this. No one else carries this exact pattern. I do a lot of couples counseling, and I see this with couples all the time. They're like, well, there's just no other couple that has the problems that we have. There's no one else stuck with a husband like mine. There's no one else who married a wife like mine. No one understands this kind of pain. No one understands this kind of pattern. No one else can understand this type of repetition. And once that belief locks in, something else happens. They stop experimenting with trying to get better. They stop trying to adjust and change and grow. They stop trying new responses. And they typically, here's the thing, catch this. Once you stop experimenting, once you stop growing, I want you to hear this. They typically become similar to the people that they're mad at for hurting them. Because here's that process. If the problem is so complex that they can't touch it, then the solution must be uniquely impossible. And if the solution is impossible, if it doesn't matter what I do to try to grow, if it doesn't matter what I do to try to heal, well, then I'm just going to give into unhealthy patterns. And often the unhealthy patterns they give into are the same ones that led to the pain that they experienced in someone else. In other words, they start to mimic the patterns that other people lived that brought pain to them. Because the breakthrough didn't come when the story changed. The breakthrough didn't come with their attempts. The breakthrough didn't come in the amount of attempts that they thought it should have. So therefore, the problem must be unique. It must be special. It must be complex person. And once it's that, there's no point in trying to change because that's just something that's who I am. That would be like me trying to make myself taller, right? I don't know, do kids still do that? I know when I was a kid, I had friends who would like hang from their hands every day trying to make themselves taller. And then when they realized that didn't work, they're like, well, maybe it'll make my wingspan longer because they played basketball. I don't know, do kids still do that? Either way, it's like trying to make yourself taller. You are born to be whatever height you're going to be, and you're not going to change that. I have brown eyes. I can change that with contacts, but it doesn't actually change the color of my eyes. It just changes what you see. And often when that becomes how we look at our response to our trauma, or we look at our problems, and somehow our problems are super complex, and they're more complex than anyone else's, and they are special. I mean, look, there's other people that have had bad fill-it-in, bad fathers, bad mothers, bad brothers, bad sisters, but no one has had it as bad as me. There are other people that have had hard workplaces, but no one as bad as me. There are other people that have bad spouses, but no one as bad as me. What happens is that becomes then an excuse to participate in your own bad behavior, your own entrapping behavior, your own enslaving behavior. And then once that happens, we end up in places we never want to go. Real transformation comes when we start to ask ourselves questions and we own the fact that, hey, you know what? I didn't do this. I didn't do whatever it is that brought this to me, but I wonder, what did I participate in? What am I participating in as a result of the trauma that happened to me? What am I participating in as a way to solve this problem that isn't healthy? This is why alcoholics or any substance abuse person, they rarely stop. I had someone call me one time and they wanted to get their son in. They were referred to me by a friend, and she called and she was like, hey, this is so-and-so. I want to get my son in to see you. I have a referral from so-and-so. And, we really need to get him in because he's messing up his life with his addictive behavior. Okay, well, how old is your son? Well, he's 30. Okay, then he'll need to call me. Because unless your son wants to change, you wanting to change for him won't help him. And here's the thing, he probably started his addictive behavior because it was actually soothing a serious problem that he had nothing to do with, that he didn't create, that he didn't do. Or maybe he did. Maybe he got involved in the behavior and it was his own doing, and then the problems became hard. This is the problem with the expectation that life should be simple, or that the more I get a hold of life, the easier it should be, because that isn't how it works. And what happens is then when our problems get hard and our problems get big, what happens is we start to think, oh, these are just unique problems. And then we're stuck. And he's no longer willing to ask himself, where am I participating? And this is the second part you need to really catch. And where can I participate in my healing, my growth, and my change? Because the only thing that actually moves you is when you decide to start participating in your healing, your growth, and your change. And you typically have to start with the change first, which brings you growth, which brings you healing. The only way that I will find growth is by making changes. and then repeating them. I had a professor and a mentor who used to say, in order to change, you need three things: willpower, way power, stay power. And most people fail on the stay power because their assumption is that once they have the willpower and the way power, in other words, once they want to change and they know how to change, they think it should happen faster than it does. Because movement doesn't start then. Movement, or at least it doesn't feel like it starts then often. And so this woman that called me, her son, I was like, he'll have to call me. And that's not going to feel like change. That's actually going to be very hard for him. I didn't say all this to her. This was years ago. I don't even know if he ever got the help that he needed because he never called me. But he may have called someone else, or he may not have. I think that's the hardest part. It's certainly the hardest part for new therapists. Not everybody who comes to therapy wants change. Not everybody who gets referred to you wants change. Not everybody who shows up every week wants change. Sometimes they just want to go so that they can feed that narrative. Yeah, man, my anxiety is so bad that even my therapist doesn't know how to help me. Or yeah, even my therapist. And like there's an institution here nearby that used to test kids for ADHD. I think they still do. I think they still do. I don't know that for sure. And they actually would tell parents, yeah, I've never seen ADHD this high on a test before. And I was talking to the owner one day, nice guy, and he's like, yeah, a lot of I don't remember what he called them, clinicians, that's what we'll call them. They'll say that because they're trying to help the parent feel some relief because they haven't felt any traction and growth. And I get his good intentions. I get their good intentions. But in reality, what they were doing was they were enslaving those people. Well, that's probably uncharitable. They weren't enslaving them, but they were certainly giving them the manacles by which those people would enslave themselves. Because if I'm special and my problems are special, then I'm stuck. If it's just normal humanity to have hard things in your life, for life to be hard, if that's just default, then I'm responsible for how I respond. I may not be responsible for the problem. Although, sometimes I think people are. If you want to kind of pull at that thread a little bit more and you're new here, on March 11th, episode 336, I talked about the difference between blame and responsibility. Feel free to catch that episode and pull it apart and see what helps you and what doesn't. Because accountability feels heavier than victimhood. I think that's one of the hardest things. And especially in our society, it's amazing to me how often people are not, all their problems are for someone else. I had a conversation with someone who was very upset at their landlord because their landlord was a boomer, which has become just such an interesting word. But their landlord was a boomer, air quotes, and I asked, well, how old do you think that person is? And she was like, well, he's in his 50s. I'm like, okay, well, that's not a boomer, that's Gen X. Well, it doesn't matter, he's a boomer. Okay, why is he a boomer? Well, he's a boomer because he's charging me $2,000 a month rent for a house that he paid off 20 years ago. Okay, well, first of all, how do you know he paid it off 20 years ago? And why is that bad? Well, the neighbor is a millennial. So I said, okay, well, what's that? And she told me somebody that's 42. I was like, all right, well, that's probably a millennial then. And he's charging $2,000 a month rent for the same square footage, same everything, but his house isn't paid off and he's still making money. And so I was like, okay, I don't understand then. If that's a fair market value rent for the apartment or the house, whatever it is, why is your landlord the trouble? Because it's paid off and he's greedy. Oh, so you have a problem because he's charging you the same exact thing the guy next door would. Yes. Okay, that doesn't make sense to me. But here's the thing, as long as her landlord's to blame, she doesn't have to go pick up another job because it's really hard to work two jobs. Yep, I know, I've been there, done that. Well, you did that 70 years ago. Okay, maybe. And no, this was not any of my kids, so don't, right? But like, I just don't understand, why is your landlord the problem? Well, what it is if she's responsible, then she has to fix it. If she doesn't make enough money to live the lifestyle that she wants, she has to fix it. And that's where growth and change happens. Self-accountability is the only thing that produces freedom. It's the only thing. There's been times in my own life where I believed I was uniquely overwhelmed. Too many things were going on. I had too many things to get done, too many expectations, too many people needing something from me, too many people wanting to talk to me. And then I was like, okay, but here's the thing. I'm responsible for my schedule. I'm responsible for what I say yes to. I'm responsible for what I say no to. And I can justify my irritability because I'm so busy. I've got this group. In fact, right now, I was just thinking about this today. I've got a group of men that I meet with that I don't feel like I'm doing a very good job. So I meet with two groups of men. One I meet with on Saturday mornings, There's like 12 or 13 guys that show up regularly, sometimes as high as like 20, sometimes as low as 3. But then there's 3 guys that I'm meeting with. It's like a 2-year thing. We just kind of meet and get together, and it's just too much. I'm not doing as well as I would like. I have surgery coming up. In fact, 2 days after this episode drops, I'm going to get my knee replaced, which is actually kind of a misnomer. They don't replace your knee. They just cut it up and then they put titanium on it. Don't believe me? Look it up. There's videos on YouTube that you can watch. But here's the thing that I have to remember. There are probably millions of people who would kill for my schedule. There are probably millions of people who would offer toes off of their left foot. That's a weird analogy, but I like it. For my schedule. There are tons of people who carry heavy loads in their schedule. Parents, business owners, single moms, caretakers, right? There are certainly many, many people that feel overwhelmed. Feeling overwhelmed isn't the problem. It's when we say to ourselves that we're the only person that's overwhelmed. We're the only person that's stuck in our schedule, and we don't ask ourselves, what am I going to do about it? Because as long as we're stuck there, we set a limit on ourselves. And so the pressure doesn't vanish when we're like, okay, well, what am I going to do about it? But the victim identity does. And when the victim identity goes away, we're free to move forward. We're free to then start moving forward. Because here's the thing most of us don't want to hear. The thing that most of us don't want to hear is that you're not the only one. I'm not the only one. You're not the only one that was hurt. I'm not the only one that was hurt. We're not the only ones who feel behind, who feel betrayed. We're not the only ones who are struggling. We're not the only ones who thought we'd be further ahead in this area, whatever this area is, than we are. We're not the only ones fighting the same temptation. We're not. The details are specific to us, but the human condition is the same. Struggle is the same. There are hundreds, if not thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people who are struggling right now, just like you are. And almost every person that you know has some sort of private war going on. Almost every person that you have ever admired had some sort of private war going on. And the belief that our problems are uniquely heavy to us is the problem, is the mindset that entraps us. Because then we defer, we build around it, we make it something that we almost worship, it becomes a deity to us. We lower our expectations around it, we shrink ourselves because of it, and it becomes the ruler of our decisions. And if anything rules our decisions without us giving it conscious thought, that's a form of slavery. And I know that's a loaded word, but I chose it purposely. Because if anything rules you and you don't control it, you're a slave to it. Freedom is not pretending that problems don't exist. I'm not saying that. Freedom is not saying that problems don't exist. But it is refusing to let the problems define you. We do have to make some distinctions here. Responsibility is not blame. Responsibility is agency. Again, I've talked about that in the past. We can say something happened and it mattered. It hurt. But now I choose to move forward. So the question becomes, how do we do that? I want to go through 5 things with you that I think can help set you free when you think you have problems that are uniquely you. The first thing you do is you tell yourself the truth. You start with, these problems are not unique to me, or my life being hard is not unique to me, or whatever it is, you tell yourself the truth. If you're an alcoholic, there have been other alcoholics who have overcome it. If you're a drug addict, there are other drug addicts who have overcome what you're dealing with. If you're a gambling addict, there are other people who've struggled with gambling addiction and they've overcome it. Whatever your problem is, it is highly unlikely, so much so that I'm almost willing to use a universal and say it's impossible that you're the first person to be dealing with it. If you have a dad that is abusive and does not own his own mistakes, if you have a mom that is narcissistic, if you have a sibling that is just wrapped up into their own world, you are not unique in that problem. And you have to start there. You have to tell yourself the truth about what's going on in your life. You have to ask yourself, maybe what did I do to create this problem? That's a good place. Now, I want to make sure there's a distinction here. There are things that we live in. We live in the shadows of other people's actions. If you've been with me for a long time, you know I believe that our belief system leads to our values, leads to our actions, leads to our consequences. And those consequences, other people live in those, in the shadow of those. So not every problem you have did you create, but you need to tell yourself the truth about it. Did you create it? Did you create part of it? If you married the same guy 3 times, the second 2 times are kind of on you. If you dated the same girl 3 times, the second 2 times are kind of on you. Oh, Joe, no. Like I had a woman tell me one time, I made him wait and pursue me, Really? Oh yeah, I got to know him before we got married. Really? And I say really like that because I want to say, okay, well, how long did you date? 8 weeks. From the time they met to the time they got married, 8 weeks. And she made him wait. And it was not good. We'll just say that. There are things I want to say, but I think the FCC would come for me. So you have to tell yourself the truth, all of the truth about whatever it is that's going on in your life. That's the first thing. So we admit it, we tell ourselves the truth, and then we ask ourselves, now what, or so what, or then what? In other words, okay, I have this problem. It's really hard. I have PTS, and that is unfair because PTS comes from something that happened to you. Okay, but now what? Now what am I going to do about it? Or then what? Then what am I going to do about it? How am I going to start to look for change? What am I going to do to change my life? What am I going to do to respond to this? What am I going to do to challenge where this problem has created agency in my life? What am I going to do to look at my life and say, okay, this right here isn't serving me. It was, but it's not now. It was, but it's not now. Or maybe it never was. Or we're just going to look at it and we're going to say, okay, you know what? I have this ex-husband. I have this ex-wife that is completely unreasonable. So what am I going to do about it? How am I going to live true to my values? How am I going to live true to being the person that I want to be? Accepting that people are complex, right? We have CPS, complex person syndrome. People are complex. Or we could just say we have CH, complex humanity. That's fine. That's accurate. But what are we going to do about it? Maybe you have financial troubles that you didn't create. What are you going to do about it? Maybe you have health problems that maybe you did create or maybe you didn't create. What are you going to do about them? How are you going to move forward and make changes? That's the question. So, okay, yep, this is going on. So now what? Then what? Or so what? Not so what, like, so what? But it's like, so what am I going to do about this? Because until we start to ask ourselves that question and we start to bring the responsibility back to ourselves, we're stuck. And when we're stuck, we stop asking ourselves what we can do about it. And we stop asking ourselves the next important question. And this is the third step. We have to start asking ourselves and start looking into our life and asking ourselves, where am I giving agency to this problem? Where am I kind of giving away my own power, my own control over my life to this problem, to this set of circumstances, to this difficulty, to this trouble? Where am I letting it rule me? Where am I letting this problem rule me of whatever it is that's going on in my life? Am I letting it rule me in that I'm giving it myself an excuse to talk poorly to my wife and children or to my family because, fill in the problem? Am I allowing myself to drink more than I should to the point where I'm an alcoholic because I had a hard childhood or I have a hard ex? Or am I parenting my children poorly because my ex-spouse or my baby dad or baby mama or baby daddy is doing it poorly too, and I'm overcorrecting? Where am I choosing to engage in creating more? This is a hard question. Where am I choosing to engage in more problems in my life than I am engaging in potential solutions to the problems in my life? Because once we do that, then we're risking failure, but we're also moving ourselves towards change. And once we're doing that, once we're moving towards change, we can ask ourselves, what's the smallest step I could take that might change this problem, that might move me more towards growth and healthiness? And that becomes a game changer, right? Like once we're like, okay, where am I giving agency to this problem? We can say, okay, well, what would be the smallest thing that I could do to stop giving agency to that problem? And it might even set us free to the point where we could take a big swing at something. We could try something big and move towards changing the problem with something big. But whatever happens, you're moving. And movement leads to growth because what it does, it lets you do the fifth thing, which is build momentum. Momentum doesn't happen by accident. It happens on purpose. It happens by being willing to fail. It happens by being willing to try and not succeed, however we want to spell that word there. And it happens by continuing to grow, leaning into the problem rather than letting the problem define us. We've got to tell ourselves the truth. That's step one. We've got to admit it. And then we've got to ask, now what? So what? Or then what? What are we going to do about it? Then we've got to look for where we're giving agency away from our life that we have over our life to the problem. And then we just got to choose, what are we going to do? And it can be the smallest thing, because once we get that one thing done, once we failed at it enough, we've succeeded, then we can add something to it and we can layer it and we can scaffold it and we can build our way up and build momentum. And that brings us to growth and health. Because your problems are real, but they do not need to be your identity. Your problems are absolutely painful, but they do not need to be your master. You control how you respond to them. And if you're choosing not to control that response, you're probably reacting. But here's the really crappy news. That means you're still choosing. All right, so hopefully this helps you. If you're going through a hard time, I want you to know that you can hold two things at once. You can hold that this is really hard and it's not all that special or unique. There's probably a lot of other people that have it. All right, thanks so much for listening. We'll catch you next week.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed today's show, please share with a friend. And hey, give us that rating in your podcast store. Until next time, change possible.